except for our host and guest Lori. So we can do that as we get ready to start. I'm going to have Lynn start when she's ready. So welcome.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. And yes, thank you everybody on this call for joining us, which is the first in our series of events, our conversations around attitude over age, embracing 50 and beyond. So I'm Lynn Dominic. I am a Solvasa Connector, and I am beyond 50. And I want to recognize, before we introduce Lori to the group formally, I want to recognize my business partners in Solvasa who helped to collaborate and make this event possible. Phyllis Park, Susan Smiley Wenzel, and Stephanie Wong. And almost 50, Chris Denton, who was very pivotal in this conversation about age that really resulted from a conversation she had with Phyllis when Phyllis joined Solvasa a few months back. And Phyllis's first reaction was, I'm probably the oldest person in the company. So Chris said, no, you're not. And she said, women of a certain age, 50 and beyond, or not even putting an age number on it, are thriving and doing amazing things. You shouldn't really think about it in that context. So Chris said, I think you should really open this discussion up and really kind of talk about this and really create something around this that people can feel comfortable talking about and really celebrate.
Oh, yeah, what's wrong with us oldies?
Yeah, I mean, this is
honey, 50 plus she's talking. Look, I don't know if I'm even accepted. I think I'm a kid.
Here we are. So what we're going to be talking about is really with Lori tonight is mindset. It's the whole attitude over. We're also going to touch on the importance of community and career. So I have to formally introduce Lori. She's not a stranger to a lot of us, but for those of you who don't know her, she is the CEO of Solvasa and the executive chairman or chairwoman or chairperson of Solvasa. She also had an incredible career at Rodan & Fields as the CEO. She was there 8 years and she took the company to $8 billion in sales. She was also the president of Nu Skin. She's also worked as the director of skincare ventures at Johnson & Johnson, at Neutrogena. She's been the chairwoman of the board at Avon. So she knows how to speak to women and she knows about all things beauty and beyond. So Lori, thank you again for being our premier guest. We're so happy to have you. And when we were putting this event together, we really talked about some of the things that we know were important to you and wanted to address. And certainly mindset is really important. So if you could kind of tell us how you are currently embracing this new venture at being beyond 50, and really what are your thoughts on how we can shift from that number-centric mindset to really attitude over age?
Well, first of all, thanks for the great setup, and hi everybody, and thank you for being on with us tonight. And we just want to make this fun. We're going to open it up at the end for our questions. You know, the whole aspect, you know, sometimes it's funny because I'll hear people referencing and there's that song, you know, once I was, you know, whatever, once I was 7 years old, once I was black, and soon I'll be 60 years old. And I make it sound like 60 is so old. And I'll just put it out there. I'm 64, and it is just a number. And what's amazing is I don't find that anybody treats me like I'm any different than I felt that I was treated when I was in my 30s or 40s, other than there is maybe a higher level of respect and appreciation. And this and so in terms of this idea of attitude over age, um, you know, this aspect of mindset is so very important. And you know, there are two mindsets really as it relates to life and business and careers. And one is a growth mindset, and one is a fixed mindset. And people who have much more of a fixed mindset are people who get stuck in their ways, and they and it's human nature to kind of hang on to the things we know. And there's a book by a business consultant, Marshall Goldsmith, written that was written a number of years ago, but it's one of my more, I'm a business book junkie, and it's one of my more favorite business books, and it's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And the idea is that there are a lot of things in our lives that have gotten us to where we are today. And if, you know, we're so hanging on to what those things are as our empirical truths and what everything is about, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and for living a smaller life, and for importantly living a smaller life in the context of who's around us. But if we keep a growth or a learning or an open mindset, there's a little bit of vulnerability there, recognizing we don't know everything, and the world is changing around us. But if we let go a little bit, not to, you know, keep who we are, our DNA is our DNA, and all of our life's experiences are such an important part of who we are, but embrace what's coming ahead, embrace foresight and being futuristic also. We don't have to be stuck in this past. And so, you know, it was kind of interesting for me personally, because I had a very unusual career. I didn't follow really the traditional career path. And and I actually, my husband and I made kind of a pact that by age, you know, when I turned 59 and when he turned 69, we're 10 years apart, that was about the age we thought for sure he should be retiring. And so we made this decision that by that age we were both going to retire. So you heard that I was the original CEO of Rodan and Fields that did the pivot into the social selling model and grew the business to become the leading independent skincare brand in the US. And we had decided that, you know, that was going to be it. We were going to be done after a certain age. And I had started off with the intent to step down, and along with Steve, my husband. And, you know, when it was interesting, because when we got to that point, I felt like, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. I had made the commitment, and I was going to step out of my career and really just enjoy our retirement. But what I learned pretty quickly is that, you know, having had an atraditional career and thinking I'm going to approach my entire retirement in a traditional way was kind of foolish. So I have to say, I never actually really retired. Right from day one, stepping out of Rodan and Fields, I started doing some non-competitive advisory work in business areas outside of beauty, outside of direct selling. But I was the executive in residence at University of San Francisco. I was on the board of a biotech company. I was on the board of another financial sponsor company. I was on the board of a nonprofit. My husband tried to get me to play golf because he thought I needed a hobby other than working. And that didn't really stick. I just found that I just really loved being involved with entrepreneurs and startup businesses and companies. And so, you know, this idea of me being, I never once had anybody come back to me and say, I don't value you because of your age. In fact, it's been just the opposite, where I have found that my value has been even more appreciated at this point in time. And I, barely a day or a week goes by where people aren't calling me seeking advice. And this has been going on. So yeah, that's this idea of mindset, and it's where you put yourself. If, the world tells you that you need to retire at a certain age, no reason to listen. And if the world tells you that, your value is diminished at a certain age, shame on us for, believing it, because I can tell you, I feel every bit as youthful, energetic as I did in my 30s.
Was there something in particular that attracted you to Solvasa?
Well,
You say
yeah,
retire, we know you retired to Sonoma, which people dream about retiring to a vineyard in Sonoma. What was it that lured you out of retirement for that particular spot?
it's funny. As I left Rodan and Fields, one of the things that I did do is I have always made a point to, and I believe that, it's that so much of what business is about is having a huge network of resources to tap into. And so I have, through the years, made a point to engage and get involved and look for diversity in everything I do, because the ideas and the learning come from so many different sources. If you put your head down and keep your nose to the grindstone, you miss out on everything that's going on around you. But if you kind of look up every now and then and reach out. So I've been involved for a number of years, actually since 2011, in a group called the Alliance of CEOs. And the reason I joined the Alliance of CEOs is because when we were getting Rodan and Fields going, I always said, I can do any job in this company except the digital tech job. And, there was a little bit of the age thing there. It's like I grew up in, when I was in school, I was still on an old-fashioned typewriter in college, doing term papers with liquid paper and all of that. So I didn't really grow. Ohio State was very advanced in computer technology when I was there. So they had this mainframe computer that was in a big high-rise building, and we took some classes where we can go and take tests on these terminals. So I didn't really grow up digitally. So I'm an immigrant, not a native to the digital world. And this was going to become a problem for me in business. And so I always said I could do any job in the company. Whether it was product development or marketing or operations, except the tech job. And I was afraid of it in a way. I didn't speak the language, I didn't have the words. And I realized pretty shortly that ignorance is not bliss, and that I really needed to plug in. And so I joined the Alliance of CEOs, but I wanted to be in a group that was primarily about consumer tech, not in a group that was about consumer products or the things that I knew. I wanted to plug into a group where there were people that I didn't know. Well, it turns out I was the only woman in the group. But I've been in that group for years. It's been so important to me, just in having resources to connect to on the digital side. When I retired, I actually became a group director. I was asked to step up and become a director to a couple groups, which, by the way, I hated doing, because I like being part of the group and part of the brainstorming session. I don't want to be the one pointing at my watch going, okay, you've talked long enough, somebody else. So ultimately, when I was working with the Alliance of CEOs, and the reason I brought this up, and the question was, as I was sharing with the group this idea as it was kind of forming about Solvasa and whether or not I wanted to go forward with another startup at this ripe old age. A startup, think about it, I'm doing a startup at 64 years old. A startup is an 80-hour-a-week job. And there's, in this business model, there is no doing it halfway. It is so much about, being there and being connected and really understanding this personal and community side of it. So I'm talking to this group, and somebody said to me, "Why are you doing this?" And one person said, "I know what it is. You need to scratch your founder itch, because even though you've done startups, you have never been the true founder of the company." And it's like, is that really it? You know, ultimately, I have to say it really wasn't that. What it really was is that, and I think some of you have heard the story maybe too many times, but the day my non-compete with Rodan and Fields expired, that very day was the day I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so there were all of these. Avon was waiting for me for my non-compete to expire. And Dr. Paul Nassif, who is the doctor on Botched, who wanted to do a skincare line, was waiting for me for my non-compete to expire in another board. And all these people were waiting for my non-compete to expire so I could advise them and work with them. And boom, on that very day, I get a diagnosis of breast cancer. And I know several others on the call here have dealt with breast cancer. You know, we're, you know, the 1 in 8, and it feels like more than that to me, you know, with the number of people involved. And I was so fortunate to be connected with Dr. Christy Funk, who is the very famous breast surgeon who's done the surgeries on Angelina Jolie and Sheryl Crow. This is all in the public domain. And she was just there for me. And I decided to go to LA to be treated. Just having that kind of wonderful personal connection. Well, the first other introduction she made to me was to Dr. Ritu Chopra, who is, as they joke about, you know, being brother and sister from different parents. And if you know, physically, they couldn't look more different. You have Christy as, you know, the blonde hair California girl, and Chopra, who is kind of a surfer dude, but he's, you know, ethnic Indian. But they're very, very close, and they do pretty much all their surgeries together. And so while I'm going through the surgery and the reconstructive process, Dr. Chopra is very, you know, kind of judiciously talking to me about the skincare industry, and it's kind of dripping these conversations as I'm seeing him every couple of weeks. And he was making house calls for me, which was, I was fortunate. My Southern California house is on his way home. And then he finally cuts to the chase. And the funny part of the story is he starts getting really serious about wanting me to help him start a business while I am completely, you know, naked from the waist up. And he's examining my not so gorgeous breasts at that point in time, because it was then the reconstructive process. And he asked me to help him start this company. And he shares the idea of what he wanted to do from a skincare perspective. And I said to him, you know what? Your idea of bringing together kind of some of the more traditional Eastern solutions for aesthetics and beauty, along with the Western cosmeceuticals, is really, really wonderful. And I love that. But I said, you know what? I've learned that I was missing a big pillar in skincare when through my entire career, and that related to this aspect of the impact of stress on cellular health, which I became a student of. And I said, I think there is something even bigger in all of this. And he goes, this is great. And I agree with you 100%. It's the way I approach my practice. It's the way I approach my patients. It's how I think about things, having grown up in, you know, this a traditional Indian family with my grandfather being a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine. It's all just perfect. Can you help me do it? And I said, you know what? I'm retired. I made this commitment to retire, but I will help pull resources together on your behalf. And ultimately, and this was the really big decision, is I became so passionately committed to what it was we were doing and realizing how important it was. And at the risk of sounding horribly egotistical, so forgive me for this, I kind of realized that there wasn't anybody else who can do it. Just it being at the intersection of really understanding social selling, because this had to be done in the context of community, and really having the connections that I've built through the years in the world of beauty and skincare and digital technology and you know, bringing the whole thing together and having the connections that actually could bring the funding to us. What originally became a yes, I'll help you out became a co-founder situation. So got to scratch that itch, but also, you know, stepping in as the CEO. That I held back on that for a while and then realized that, you know what, no way I could do it halfway. Just no way. Had to be all in and loving every minute of it.
That's fantastic. Well, you just mentioned you let that C word drop, community. I know how important it is to you, and I can say it's extraordinary so far. I love the community in Solvasa. Talk about that.
Well, you know, community is, I mean, it's important to all of us, more so than we may even realize. And it's, you know, I for the years, and I just made a little video of this. Meredith asked me to make a video, and I think she just posted it on the virtual mentor app for people to share out. But this aspect, introducing myself, and this, and through the years, and this actually started back in my Nu Skin days, because at Nu Skin we had, you know, a nutritional arm and a skincare arm, and it was a, you know, a direct selling business. And I had the opportunity to attend some really exclusive meetings at the time, and this is going to make everybody on this call crazy. I attended this meeting called the Meeting for Geriatric Dermatology, and they defined geriatric as 45 or older. And I know, I saw you just choke on that one. But a lot of it was, you know, this aspect of, they had specialists in, who studied centenarians, people who lived to 100, and super centenarians, people, a lot of people live to 100, but very few people make it to 110. So they were studying, you know, what was it about, what was the lifestyle and the health practices. And they had people from Mayo Clinic and from Harvard and all these places talking about longevity. And skin was part of it, but it was more of a longevity conference. And there were these 10 principles that I kind of pulled together coming out of that conference. And I started making that more or less my thing, what I would speak about. And when I talk at conferences is the 10 strategies for well-being and longevity. And I had these 10 strategies, and they were things like be proactively involved in your health, and you know, practice lifelong learning, and you are what you eat. And there was a whole, you know, list of them. And number 10 was take care of your skin, and it'll take care of you. So there are two things to unpack here. Number one is that I had taking care of your skin as something separate from the other 9. And this has been one of my more recent aha learnings as I've started studying telomeres and cellular health and longevity in my, during my cancer treatment, and really starting to understand the impact of lifestyle and what it does in terms of inflammatory disease. But the other thing that I wanted to, and so connecting the dots, I realized was something that I had not done effectively through my entire career. I knew all these things, but I didn't really connect them as effectively as I needed to. Even having authored a best-selling book on skincare, I knew that they were connected, but not the extent to which they were. But going back to this aspect of community, the number one correlate, and this is in study after study, and I keep going back and looking at opinion leaders in this area, the number one correlate for well-being and longevity is being connected to something bigger than yourself. This sense of connection, this personal connection, it is so important to us as a human species. And so this aspect of community is, I mean, we need it, we thrive on it. And you used to hear about, you know, men retiring from employment and going into retirement, and then, you know, 6 months later they died of a heart attack.
Yep.
Or when, you know, the man passed away, the wife would follow not too long after that. There is this aspect of connections that we so need. And I mentioned it to some people recently, but one of the most uplifting television shows that to me was kind of validating recently, it was a television documentary. It's called, so Carl Reiner died, I think it was about 3 weeks ago now. He passed away at the age of 98. And HBO brought back this, kind of brought to the top of their playlist, it looks like, a documentary that he had done back in 2017, a few years ago, that it was entitled, If You're Not in the Obit, short for obituary, if you're not in the obit, eat breakfast. And it's, and what the whole documentary was about was, he realized that, you know, he actually saw an obituary with his picture in it one morning. And I forget whether it was the New York Times or whatever. And there's a big picture of him in the obituaries, which he actually said just freaked him out. But it was actually the obituary for Mitzi Gaynor. And he was in that photo with her. And she had died at the, you know, at the age, I think it was 84. But he was starting to realize that a lot of his friends, his cronies, were all living, not only living into their 90s, but living productive lives into their 90s. He wrote 5 books after the age of 90. So he started asking the question, what is it? What's the difference between, you know, those people who just, you know, barely get to their life expectancy or not, versus those who are active and vital and productive and loving life into their 90s. And so this is what that series was about. It was so uplifting. My husband and I watched it together one night over a cup of Golden Moment. And for real, I'm not making that up. And we just found it so inspiring. But what was especially interesting is they had a longevity specialist who was a young guy who wasn't, you know, was probably in his 40s, it looked like, but talking about what causes this, you know, what is the secret, if you will. And he went right back to the people who live longer, when they did a study, on average connect in person with people over the course of several hours every single day. And they connect with a number of different people over a number of different hours every single day. And that was, it just went right back to feeling connected, feeling part of something.
Yeah, it's so, so talk about physical health for just a minute before we open it up to questions, because it was on that, it was one of your 10 things. So,
Yep.
you know, how do you stay physically healthy, and
Yeah.
how do you see it all being connected?
Well, it is very, very much connected. You know, I heard a talk from, again, this was an Alliance of CEOs thing a number of years ago. The person who at the time was the CEO of Kaiser Permanente. And he, I thought, wow, this is going to be a boring talk. And it turns out it was one of the most fascinating talks ever and most meaningful to me personally. But one of the things, you know, he's talking about healthcare reform in a way, and the cost of insurance, and talking about what Kaiser does and sort of what their secret sauce is in terms of healthcare, because they're more vertically integrated than, you know, your typical insurance provider. And that's part of it. But a big part of what they do is data. And they keep track of every possible piece of data on everybody who interfaces on any level with their system. So they can start to develop correlates. Like, people who do this are more like this in general. And I mean, they discovered things like women who are on antidepressants during their first trimester of pregnancy have a higher incidence of children with autism. Kind of interesting. But one of the things that he really wanted to emphasize is that one of the biggest challenges in our community and in our society, and in terms of longevity and well-being, it's not, you know, the devastating kind of things like cancer. It's the lifestyle inflammatory diseases like diabetes. And diabetes is the major cost to our healthcare system. And diabetes is a lifestyle disease for some people. I mean, if you have, juvenile onset diabetes, that's a genetic thing. But as it relates to the type of diabetes that is really a huge impairment to well-being and longevity, it's very much related to lifestyle. And what they found is that people who walk a half an hour a day, and it doesn't even have to be a consecutive half an hour, it could be in 15-minute increments, but just this aspect of moving is so important. And with urbanization, we have become a far more sedentary kind of community. And I know that even now with Zoom, that's my biggest risk right now, is my butt is in this chair way too much during the course of the day. But to get up and get out and move, and that movement is not just muscular, it actually affects your brain chemistry. So that all the other things that you need to do for well-being and health and wellness you're more acceptable, more able to adopt, because you're developing the brain chemistry is right to serve you better there. So that, to Kaiser Permanente was their big approach to healthcare reform, is just get everybody moving. So that's one thing, is to make sure that you get at least that 15 minutes or that 30 minutes of movement and walking every single day, to, however you can work that in. Really important. But then the other thing is there's an aspect of weight training where women tend to lose muscle mass and musculature pretty rapidly after a certain age. And really the decline tends to start in your 30s, but just a little bit of weight training. And at the time I was hearing this data and these statistics at the Conference for Geriatric Dermatology, they were saying that over an age, I can't remember, it was like 65, a lot of women can't even lift a gallon of milk with one hand, which is, but that can all be prevented or addressed with just a minimal amount of strength training every single day. So to get some of that, for some people, for me, I'm still very aerobic. And these days I'm out on my tennis court with the ball machine, hitting tennis balls. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I used to be able to run down anything, but I'm getting better at it again. I've been working out a little more at it. But I'll get on an elliptical or a treadmill. I like aerobic. I jump rope sometimes because I'm on a drug that decreases your bone density really quickly, and I'm concerned about that. And so compression exercises. So I do some jump ropes. And am I as disciplined about getting what I need every day as I should be? That's a little bit hard to balance right now with starting up Solvasa, but I do make a point, and it is a big deal. And my next door neighbor over the fence, who is just I think a year shy of 60, she is ripped because she does cross training and CrossFit, which is a little bit much for me. But I'll tell you what, at 60, she's sporting a six pack. So. There is no reason to let it go.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're gonna turn it over to questions, because if you don't mind, I am sure people have a few questions that they want to ask you. I will ask the first one, and that is, you've talked about 3 different great things. How does that philosophy that you just spoke about, wellness, mindset, and everything else, how much of that shapes how you approach Solvasa?
All of it. In fact, there's a blackboard behind me that you can't see. If I picked up my phone and showed it to you, there it is. You see that blackboard over there?
Yeah.
What's on that blackboard is what I call the 10 principles of integrative beauty, which will, by the way, be my next book, but it's basically the foundation for Solvasa. And all of these things are so interconnected because basically at the heart of it, and this is the thing that I missed so much, is at the heart of everything as it relates to aging or what we call inflammaging, and this affects our skin and our mind and our bodies in so many ways, is this aspect of what stress does, and stress triggers inflammation, and that stress comes from all different sources. It comes from our internal well-being, it comes from external environmental sources, and a lot of it is what's going on right in there. And I had no true appreciation of the profound impact of mindfulness as it relates to longevity, well-being, and beauty until I really started researching this as I was going through, again, my cancer treatment, the surgeries, and then the ongoing drugs that, my whole career was in pretty much tied to anti-aging skincare and longevity. And there's an argument to be made that some of the things that, I believed as empirical truths, I'm now second guessing, and it's not just me. There are a lot of people in this space. And so, what goes in shows up on our skin. And there's aspects just of diet and well-being, and it all manifests in beauty. But I've also learned to think about beauty as really what beauty should be defined as, is it's the culmination of somebody needs to mute.
Just make sure everybody's muted.
Sometimes the host can mute people.
Stephanie?
Thank you. There we go. We're good. Okay. So basically, as we started thinking about all things, everything that we do at Solvasa is about managing and balancing so that stress doesn't trigger an inflammatory response that then leads to inflammation. And that might mean in the approach to skincare. So for instance, you won't see us using very aggressive cosmeceuticals in Solvasa. It's everything that we do is anti-inflammatory and anti-stress. And who knew, as we were getting this whole thing going and getting ready to launch, that a part of our lives was, we were going to be suffocating our skin under masks. And if you're listening to what dermatologists are saying right now, they're talking about putting your skin on doing, this Google alert showed up, it was intermittent fasting for your skin, which I have to think of as intermittent fasting, as I've said in the past. But when your skin is under occlusion like that, things like retinoids and benzoyl peroxide and aggressive hydroxy acids are just going to make your skin worse and actually accelerate the aging process. So we were kind of already set up to deal with, the unexpected, but also this aspect of mindfulness. And I could tell you that I am not somebody, as you could probably sense, that can easily sit on a cushion and meditate for a half an hour to 45 minutes. And so I started, so at Solvasa, we thought, well, mindfulness really needs to be part of everything. How do we apply mindfulness in a way that is easily incorporated into everybody's lifestyle? And that's where we connected with Dr. Kristen Race, who's about mindfulness for, as she puts it, for kick-ass women with big-ass lives. And she's been involved in the Lean In Foundation with Sheryl Sandberg and his coach Sarah Blakely and all these other really high-intensity women, and realizing that you have to weave mindfulness in little ways. And so, I mean, this was all part of how it all came together. It's like, well, let's habit stack or anchor mindfulness practices to the skincare and beauty practices that we put in place. And let's anchor mindfulness to the nutritional beverage that we have. And so just weaving it all together. So all 10 of the things that, and which also includes, by the way, staying fiscally fit. And it's not that money is going to buy you happiness, but financial woes will take your mind to a dark place sometimes. And, you know, being able to do something that puts you in some level of control where you can take affirmative action so that you're not always thinking about, so that you can focus on what's most important.
Wow, thanks. So that was great. Terrific. So who else has a question for Lori? Whoever does.
If there's anything in the chat, I'll try to take a look at the chat here, see if I could find it.
Raise your hand. Unmute yourself if you have a question for Lori.
Now, one of the things I see on here is somebody referenced yoga. And for many, many women, and I mentioned that I still am very much aerobic in my exercise, but I did go through, I actually did my first ever yoga session last year at age 63, I hate to admit. I just, you know, I used to teach aerobics back in the day where you cut the neck out of your t-shirt, you wore the leg warmers and put the sweatband around your head like Olivia Newton-John. Let's get physical. And, you know, so that was always kind of my thing. I like to move, I like to dance. But I also realized that yoga is kind of important for, in a different way. And this way of being able to stretch and do things that are maybe a little kinder and gentler to your body. So I thought I really needed to learn and understand that. And I I actually downloaded some, the Beachbody programs for PIO. So, I have started doing more yoga, but I know for so many women, yoga is the solution if the high impact or the aerobic exercise just doesn't work for you anymore, that everybody can do yoga, everybody. And so, yes, for whomever wrote yoga every day, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Phyllis wanted to know if you could give us the definition of Solvasa.
Yeah, so the definition of the name, and it really came from this aspect of East meets West in a way, which is, you know, Dr. Chopra's kind of the personification of that. And, you know, we were looking, so a lot of our formulations and products really look to combine the best of Ayurvedic, adaptogenic, but not just Indian, also other Eastern learning, but everything that's scientifically validated. So when we put the name together, we wanted the name to kind of be representative of what we wanted to be in people's lives, and a Western route and an Eastern route, and from a pure business perspective, something that we could truly own. And so it took us a long time to get to this name. This was the hard, probably, we had a lot of different working names. In fact, we had to change the name of our company a couple of times. That's how we were registered. But when we finally landed on it, it was this breath of, deep breath. But Sol is the Western root, meaning sun or light or energy. And Vasa is the Eastern or Sanskrit root. That means really abode, but an abode or a vessel. So a vessel of light. And that's what we want to be in. That's what we want to be in everybody's life, so that we can all be a vessel of light in the lives of those who matter to us most. So,
I love that. Anybody else? Thank you, Phyllis. Everybody's commenting on their exercise routine, which is great. You've got everything from jazzercise to aerobic to Peloton in there. Lori, thank you so much.
This
Oh,
is my pleasure. Oh, go.
Michelle actually asked before we let you go, one more thing. Where
Sure.
do you see Solvasa going? That's a great question, Michelle.
Yeah, I think Solvasa has a place in everybody's life. Um, and whether it's from a business perspective or whether it's to help you be more effective in another business you're doing. A lot of the mindfulness programs are about productivity and resilience, and no matter what business you're doing, even if it's another direct selling company, I think our products and our programs can be helpful. But at the heart of everything we do, it all manifests, because health and well-being, your skin is your biological advertisement of health. So while we have a pipeline of products that are just, first of all, what we try to ensure is that every single one of our products adds value to people's lives, not just switching out for another product you're using. So everything bringing utility and incremental value. So we have a pipeline, and people would ask me, so where are you going with the products? So we have products for the skin, the body, and the mind with our a mindfulness app. Where are we building out that pipeline? In which of these three areas? And the answer is yes. But I could tell you areas that we are especially interested in for a number of reasons that I think are really critical, and we want to be on the leading edge. And so you'll hear us oftentimes talk about the human biome and probiotics. The human biome is very involved in just day-to-day well-being and managing inflammation in ways we are just starting to understand. So as we're working on developing the products, the beautiful thing is we can bring some of our researchers together. And so I encourage everybody to take a look at our Solvasa Life blog, which started well before we actually had our products launched, because we could share this learning and this information about this idea of integrative beauty and bringing the skin, body, and mind together in the context of community, with the researchers that we're working with, or the podcast, the beauty construct. But these are the areas we're continuing. You will be seeing, knock on wood here, a couple new skincare products later this year. You'll be seeing new business tools coming out very, very shortly. You'll be seeing more ingestible products coming down the pike in 2021. We are always adding new content to the mindfulness app, new processes, but whole new modules that are coming up that are, from a personal perspective, addressing different needs in different ways, but also from a Solvasa business perspective, giving people reasons to engage new customers and with new conversations in new ways. So that's happening every day.
Great. Before we go, thank you, Lori, so much. Those of you who are on the call, just let us know what topics you want us to cover in our future events, because we're going to be doing these as a series. And, we can't promise Lori is going to be back with us for every single one, but maybe we'll bring her back, down the line another time. But what would you like to see us cover when we talk about this attitude over age and, having these conversations about being 50 and beyond? So please let us know in the chat what you'd like us to cover, and we'll check that out.
Can I ask a question, or do we need to wrap up?
No, we can. We can. We just want to keep it under an hour. So we're fine.
Okay, got it. Lori, thank you so much. You've been awesome and so interesting, and I've been taking notes on my phone while I've been listening to you. But I did have a question. If you were just talking to someone like me who was unfamiliar with your products, what would be your recommendation for like the first product to try?
Well, we've been really focusing people quite a bit on our crystal energy wand and distressants, because between these two things, it is a different approach that's very relevant right now. So, you know, it's a rose quartz crystal. It's a vibrating massage action, and what we're really trying to help people understand the profound benefits of both lymphatic massage, which is becoming kind of in pop culture, and especially among celebrities going to salons and spas for lymphatic massage, which is hard to do now anyway, but doing kind of a mini lymphatic massage every day is such a great anti-inflammatory treatment for your skin. That's basically a chemical-free treatment. But we've built in the distressants serum and glide, which the distressants can be used alone, but when used to help glide the wand over your skin, it actually delivers I just lost my train of thought. Anti-inflammatory peptides, anti-aging peptides, different very gentle cosmeceutical benefits that in and of themselves are just amazingly effective for lifting, brightening the skin. The other thing that the crystal energy wand is really amazing for, again with the glide, is muscle tension release. So a lot of us will go for, and I for 22 years have been going for Botox, even before it was approved as a cosmetic, because I have friends with needles. But you know, we get the glabellar wrinkles, which we refer to as the 11, and that really is a dynamic wrinkle that comes from furrowing your brow. Well, as we started working on, you know, the crystal energy massage, what I was really focused on a lot for me was the muscle tension release. I don't know if you could hear it, I turned it on here. But first of all, what we're finding is people are wanting multiple of these because they keep them with them all the time, because they actually they feel so good. But when you're doing it as a treatment, you could actually get that muscle tension release. And now I've been a year and a half without Botox. To say I'll never need it again, another botulinum toxin injection, I'd like to think maybe that was the case, but right now I am finding that with the distressants and the wand, I get almost everybody who uses it sees a brightening effect in their skin. It's basically, you know, a very anti-inflammatory, very simple 2-minute process a day. And the breadth of benefits are so profound. And importantly, you don't have to change anything else you're doing to use this. You could add it to whatever skin routine you're doing and derive benefits.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about it.
Lori, a couple people in the chat have asked about how, in fact, does it work for lymphatic drainage? How?
So lymphatic drainage requires some pressure and leverage, because what you're looking to do is move fluids out of your skin towards your lymph nodes, because the lymph system is what moves toxins out of your skin. So if you're puffy, what tends to happen is you get what Dr. Chopra will refer to as lymphatic congestion or lymph congestion, where things just start to pull. So when you turn the vibration on, and you start moving these fluids out of your skin, then the other thing, while it's vibrating, you could just hold it under your eyes. So you get the depuffing there, right over your eyebrows, and a circular motion on your forehead. That actually, there's a couple benefits there. One is the muscle tension release, but that also actually stimulates your pineal gland, which is a very positive thing to do from a well-being perspective. Hypothetically also supports memory function and things like that. But you know, you really, what you're doing is you're moving those fluids out. So you're moving them down. You can, but you're breaking up the lymphatic congestion basically with this movement. So super simple. And what's really nice is the crystal stays really cold. in general, but if you want it to give you really cold, you could stick it in the fridge. But the rose quartz holds on to the coolness, which is also a nice part of it. So
Yeah.
it is, it's a brightening, lifting facial treatment every day that you can do at home. You don't have to go to a spa or salon. And I mean, look it up. Look what people are paying for facial lymphatic massage when they go to, or Google, you know, and it'll come up on Well and Good, you know, why celebrities, that's like the new celebrity secret in skincare is lymphatic massage. There's good reason for it. And the questions are being asked, is there legitimacy to it? And in fact, there very much is. So,
So we're going to take one last question, and it's from Barbara. And she was thanking us for being super positive. Thank you, Lori. But do you have any recommendations of what we should avoid now that maybe years ago were recommendations? So how has that flipped based on knowing what you know right now?
Well, one of the things that's kind of interesting, and you know, it's always interesting as well to work on products that have, you know, somebody else's name on them from time to time. So back in the day when I was at Neutrogena, we used to always have people avoiding any sort of physical scrubs on their skin, whether they're, you know, the ground up walnuts or almond shells, or but more importantly, brushes and you know, things like buff puffs. We used to say that, you know, scrubbing is for your pots and pans, but not for your skin. And the reason for that is because when you're doing that aggressive physical exfoliation, while it feels really great, you get this very polished surface, there's also a theory that you're creating a chronic low-grade inflammatory process, which over time is going to get the better of you. And so, you know, kind of coming back to my our approach back in my Neutrogena days is tread lightly on your skin. Avoid anything that is harsh or irritating, because while it may give you some short-term benefits, in the long run, it's probably not right. And right now, dermatologists in general are saying, you know, go especially gentle because you're putting your skin under a mask. So those are a couple things. The other thing that I would say in general is, you know, practice an anti-inflammatory diet to the greatest extent you can, and think about your glycemic load. You know, I practice intermittent fasting, and we are developing programs around intermittent fasting for Solvasa, you know, and because we like that in terms of being anti-inflammatory. So, you know, try to avoid, you know, sugary foods, anything for sure. You know, it's okay to indulge once in a while, but make it a practice to keep your glycemic load as low as you can. That's a matter of, you know, not just what has, you know, a high glycemic index, but also how much of it you're consuming. So, you know, those are the kind of things. And yeah.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everybody. This has been terrific. Have a great night. I know it's only 5:30 there.
My husband and I are about to enjoy our golden moment together as soon as we get off. And hope you all have a great evening.
What golden moment is? It's a fabulous drink that we have at Solvasa that I have every single night. I think, Lori, all of us do every single night. It's made with turmeric and ashwagandha, and it tastes absolutely awesome. It's great. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank